Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into the federal case surrounding Sean Diddy Combs, specifically the sex trafficking and racketeering allegations.
Yeah, and our main source for this is Cassie Ventura's testimony. We're
Mhm.
drawing from, the detailed YouTube coverage of the trial proceeding.
Exactly. And our goal here, our mission for this deep dive, is to pull out the most um, critical and frankly surprising details from what she said over several days on the stand.
We want to give you a really clear understanding of the accusations, what they actually involve, and, what the potential implications are.
Right. And we do need to say up front, some of this testimony gets quite graphic. It involves allegations of sexual abuse, violence, coercion.
It's sensitive stuff, so just be aware of that as we go through it.
Okay, so let's start with the overview. Cassie's testimony, it covered her relationship with Combs, which spanned, what, over a decade?
Over a decade, yeah. And according to her, it wasn't just, a typical relationship. It was marked by intense control, serious abuse, both psychological and physical.
And a big part of her testimony revolved around these things called freak-offs.
hmm She said Combs initially introduced the idea as just voyeurism, him watching. But according to her testimony, this escalated significantly.
Escalated how?
Well, into these orchestrated sexual encounters involving multiple escorts. And crucially, she alleged these were filmed, recorded, possibly for blackmail or control down the line.
That paints a very different picture than just voyeurism. It sounds, well, systematic.
Exactly. And it connects to the legal aspects, too. Remember her civil lawsuit back in 2023? She settled that for reportedly $20 million.
Right, I remember that. And the timing was interesting.
Very interesting, because reports suggest that settlement almost immediately triggered the FBI investigation that led to this federal case.
So the civil suit wasn't the end of it. It was more like the beginning of the criminal scrutiny.
It certainly looks that way. It suggests that authorities saw something in those initial allegations that warranted a much deeper federal-level investigation into potential crimes like trafficking and racketeering.
And the personal toll she described, it's just immense. Drug use to cope, constant physical problems like UTIs, mouth sores.
Yeah, things she directly linked to the alleged forced activities, and eventually PTSD.
Yet despite all that, reports from the courtroom often described her as, well, very composed on the stand. Matter of fact, even when discussing incredibly graphic details.
That composure could be really significant for the jury, couldn't it? It might make her testimony seem more credible, especially when you hear about Diddy's reported reactions in court changing over time.
Definitely something to watch. Okay, let's drill down into one specific, very public piece of this.
Yeah.
The 2016 hotel incident. We've all seen parts of that surveillance video.
Right, multiple angles were shown in court. And Cassie narrated it. She described leaving the room barefoot, carrying her purse, a bag, her phone. Clearly her own things.
Yeah, and that's a key point, isn't it? Because Diddy's team, at his bail hearing, they suggested something different.
They did. They implied he was trying to get his belongings back when he followed her and, the alleged assault happened. Cassie saying, "These were my things," directly challenges that narrative.
It supports her claim that she was trying to flee the situation.
Absolutely. And she also testified that just before she left the room, an escort named Jules was there.
Okay, Jules.
Mm.
Now, if the prosecution can find Jules, and if she corroborates Cassie's account, that's independent validation, right?
Potentially huge. Corroboration is always critical in cases like this. An independent witness confirming even parts of the story could really strengthen the prosecution's hand.
Cassie also talked about trying to resist during that hallway struggle. She said something quite chilling.
Yeah, that resisting only made it worse. It would escalate the fight more and make it worse for myself, I think was the quote.
And when asked how many times Diddy pulled her down,
Too many to count. That phrase just hangs there, doesn't it? It implies this wasn't a one-off argument getting out of hand, but a pattern.
a pattern of coercion, maybe? And then after the incident, she took that selfie in the Uber.
Documenting her injuries, a fat lip, sunglasses hiding, presumably a black eye. She described it just like that in court.
And there were text messages shown, too. Text to Diddy afterwards.
Right, referencing the injuries, mentioning she had a movie premiere to attend with a fat lip and a black eye, and expressing disbelief, like, how could he think that was okay?
That contemporaneous evidence, the photo, the texts, it's powerful. Hard to dispute the injuries happened and that she linked them to him immediately.
Exactly. And then there were photos of the hotel hallway aftermath. A smashed vase, dirt on the walls, scuff marks. It looked violent.
Diddy's texts after that are also quite revealing. Things like, the cops are here. which she said she didn't believe.
And you're going to abandon me all alone, I'm getting arrested. Followed by her telling him to put a robe on.
What do you make of that? Put a robe on.
It could be interpreted in a few ways. Maybe managing optics, maybe fear, maybe trying to de-escalate from afar. But the prosecution might see it as him trying to control the narrative, maybe obstruct. Her response shows she's already thinking about appearances, perhaps under duress.
And then she testified he showed up at her apartment later, banging and kicking the door. His assistants apparently warned her he was coming.
Yeah, that adds another layer. Potential intimidation, maybe even witness tampering, depending on how it's argued.
But despite all that, she said she didn't call the police initially.
Right. She said she didn't want to hurt him that way. It highlights the complex emotions, the psychological dynamics often present in alleged abusive relationships. It also anticipates the defense asking, well, why didn't you report it right away?
Let's pivot to the freak-offs again. She said he introduced the idea early on as just voyeurism.
Yeah, but her initial participation, she framed it as being young, naive, wanting to please him, the man she was involved with.
But she didn't like it.
No. She said she felt dirty after the very first one and was reluctant after that. That immediate negative feeling is important context for the later allegations of coercion.
And she had specific roles, using aliases.
Veronica Bang, Anita Crawford. Those are the names she said she used to book hotel rooms. She called it her job.
Her job. Wow. And she identified how many escorts?
13. She named 13 alleged escorts involved over time. And she claimed Combs recorded these encounters and later threatened to release the videos of her.
Explicit threats. That sounds like textbook coercion blackmail.
It certainly fits the pattern alleged for sex trafficking and racketeering. She even gave details from some videos, like one with a man named Dave, oil being used. Specific detail.
Now, the physical consequences she described were severe.
Awful. Constant UTIs, painful mouth sores. She attributed those directly to friction during forced acts, burning sensations, bladder pain. She said it became chronic.
Plus stomach issues she linked to drug use.
Yeah.
MDMA, ecstasy, ketamine.
Which she alleged Combs supplied. This links back to the physical harm and also potentially introduces another illegal activity into the mix.
And after these events, there were recovery routines.
Apparently, yes. 5 fluids, massages, a personal chef preparing meals. The prosecution could argue this shows how organized and sort of routine these alleged events became. Not spontaneous, but planned and managed.
Almost like an enterprise.
That's likely how the prosecution wants the jury to see it.
She also mentioned turning to opioids for the pain, physical and emotional. And alleged Combs provided those too.
Between 2007 and 2008, she testified. That's another potential predicate act for the RA2 charges. Even if he's not charged with drug trafficking separately, alleging he provided illicit substances could bolster the overall racketeering case, showing a pattern of illegal activities.
And the frequency. How often did she say these happened?
Impossible to know, but hundreds. That was her estimate during their relationship. And significantly, she said they stopped completely once they broke up.
Hundreds. The scale is just staggering. Okay, let's talk about other specific incidents of alleged violence and control. Her 29th birthday.
Yeah, she said a dinner out with friends was cut short because he wanted a freak-off.
Were there witnesses to any of the alleged abuse over the years?
She named people in his circle, his driver assistants, security personnel, even her former manager, James Cruz. She suggested they witnessed certain things.
So potential corroboration there, too, if they testify. What about the first time she alleges he was violent?
She pinpointed it to 2007, said he hit her in the back of the head while they were in a car.
In other instances?
Just brutal accounts, allegedly stomping on her face. An incident with a wine opener where she said he put it between his fingers and lunged at her, kicking her hard in the back, leaving a large bruise, tearing up a hotel room in anger.
It sounds relentless. Did anyone ever step in?
She mentioned one time where her friends actually had to jump on his back to stop an alleged attack. That suggests others saw it and felt compelled to intervene.
There was also testimony about being confined?
Yes, to the London hotel for a week, she claimed. Only her stylist was allowed to visit. And that incident after she visited Prince's house.
Right. What happened there?
She alleged Diddy tracked her down there, dragged her out, and assaulted her. It speaks to extreme possessiveness and control, if true.
Now, the Kid Cutie situation adds another layer. They dated briefly.
During a rough patch with Diddy, yes. She testified Diddy found emails between them on her phone apparently during one of these freak-offs and absolutely lost it.
And threatened Kid Cutie.
Threatened to blow up his car. And Cassie testified that it actually happened. Kid Cudi has reportedly confirmed his car was blown up around that time.
Wow. And she sent an email about this.
To her mother, using the alias Veronica, warning about potential sex tapes Diddy had, expressing fear for her own safety and for Kid Cudi's. That email is likely significant evidence of her state of mind and the threats she perceived.
Okay, and then the most serious allegation, perhaps, from 2018, after they had broken up.
Yes. She described meeting him for dinner in Malibu, seeking closure, she said. But afterwards, she alleges an assault occurred.
How did she describe it?
As very fast, that his eyes were black, and crucially that she said no.
She explicitly said she did not consent.
That's what she testified. And she said they had no contact after that until a strange text from him in 2019 saying something like he was full of skeletons, which she interpreted as, another veiled threat.
Okay, let's shift to the trial dynamics. Diddy's reaction in court. Reports say it changed.
Yeah, apparently started off looking confident, but as Cassie's testimony went on, observers noted him becoming pale, fidgeting, taking lots of notes, even having some reported outbursts.
How might a jury read that?
It's hard to say for sure, but it could be seen as the testimony hitting its mark, perhaps him feeling the pressure of the detailed allegations.
And the defense strategy seems clear now. What is it?
It looks like they're acknowledging some level of domestic violence. They use the word indefensible for some actions depicted in the 2016 video, I believe. But they are fiercely denying the federal charges.
Sex trafficking and racketeering.
So concede the lesser, fight the bigger charges.
Essentially, they're arguing the incident stemmed from relationship issues, love, infidelity, jealousy, money, not a criminal enterprise. And they're portraying Cassie as a strong adult woman who made choices, trying to counter the narrative of coercion.
Trying to draw that line. This was bad relationship behavior, maybe even criminal domestic assault, but not federal sex trafficking.
Exactly. They focused on the 2016 video as jealousy over a phone, which Cassie refuted regarding ownership. They might also point to any evidence suggesting she seemed willing initially with the freak-offs.
But her explanation for that
was that she was trying to get time with him, that she loved him, which highlights the potential psychological manipulation involved rather than clear consent. It's complex.
Meanwhile, the prosecution is hammering the criminal enterprise angle.
Definitely. The number of escorts, the interstate travel, the alleged control over staff who facilitated things. They're building a case for an ongoing racketeering operation.
And showing those explicit images from the alleged freak-off videos that reportedly had a visible impact on the jury.
Reports described reactions of shock, disbelief. So the prosecution seems to be landing punches with the graphic nature of the evidence supporting the enterprise claim.
What about the cross-examination that's still to come or ongoing?
It's a crucial phase. Diddy's lawyers have a very fine line to walk. They need to try and undermine Cassie's credibility, but attacking her too aggressively, especially given she's pregnant, could backfire badly with the jury.
A very delicate balance. And are there other potential witnesses? We mentioned staff, friends. What about other alleged victims?
There are reports of others, sometimes referred to as Mia and Jane Doe, who are allegedly too frightened to testify. That fear itself could speak volumes, though legally it's complicated without their direct testimony.
Okay, before we wrap up, there are some other sort of side details that came up there intriguing.
Yeah, like Jason Lee mentioning attending a Diddy party years ago at Prince's house and noting weird security. It sparked some speculation, though likely unfounded, about recordings Prince might have had.
And the whole Prince connection, his issues with Warner Brothers, where Diddy later had a big deal. It's just background context, maybe.
Probably. Also, Cassie's own history as a singer, signed to Bad Boy with, let's be honest, not a huge output, despite a supposed 10-album deal. It raises questions about her career path within his sphere of influence.
And just the sheer number of other celebrity names that popped up, either during jury selection or in testimony related to parties or events. Kid Cudi, Michael B. Jordan, Lauren London.
It paints a picture of a certain world, a network,
Yeah.
and the detail about Diddy staff allegedly arranging things, delivering apology gifts after incidents, setting up the freak-offs, that points towards a system, an organization perhaps enabling the alleged behavior.
Right, suggesting it wasn't just him acting alone.
Potentially. That systemic element could be key for the RCO charges.
Okay, so let's try to summarize the key takeaways here. Cassie Ventura delivered days of incredibly detailed and disturbing testimony.
Alleging years of control, escalating physical and sexual abuse, coercion, and exploitation, all culminating in the freak-off enterprise and specific violent acts, including the 2018 alleged assault.
The defense acknowledges some bad behavior, framing it as domestic issues within a volatile relationship, but strongly denies the federal sex trafficking and racketeering. They argue she was a participant, not a coerced victim in that sense.
And the legal crux seems to be whether the prosecution can prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that this crossed the line from horrific domestic abuse into an organized criminal enterprise under federal statutes like our SUE.
It really throws a harsh light on power imbalances, especially magnified by fame and wealth. The impact on Cassie, as she described it, is clearly profound and long-lasting, and the scrutiny on Diddy now is immense.
Yeah, the jury has an incredibly difficult task weighing all this testimony. The corroborating evidence or lack thereof, the credibility of everyone involved. It touches on really fundamental questions about consent, control, and accountability.
So here's the final thought for you listening. Given everything we've heard from Cassie's testimony, the details, the alleged pattern, and considering the defense's strategy to separate domestic violence from the federal charges, what do you think is the single most crucial element that could sway the jury? Is it the sheer volume of allegations, the physical evidence, the potential corroboration, or is it the defense's ability to create reasonable doubt about the enterprise aspect?
And maybe zooming out, what does this whole case, regardless of the final verdict, tell us about how power, fame, and abuse can intersect and how these stories eventually come to light?
Definitely a lot to think about. We encourage you to keep following the case developments and the important conversations happening around it. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.